You are carrying everything you own. It fits in one trunk and a canvas bag, a change of clothes, a photograph, a few letters in an envelope, a small amount of money sewn into the lining of your coat. This is not poverty. This is calculation. You left what could not come with you, sold what could be sold, and kept what mattered. The weight of it is not heavy. The weight of what it means is something else entirely. The date is the 10th of April, 1912. The port is Southampton, England, and the ship in front of you is the largest moving object ever built by human hands. You have heard the name, of course. Everyone has heard the name by now. RMS Titanic, the White Star Line's newest and greatest vessel. 900 feet of steel from bow to stern, 11 stories from keel to funnel. A floating city designed to cross the North Atlantic in comfort so complete that the ocean itself seems almost incidental. The newspapers have been full of it for weeks. Unsinkable, they say a word that the engineers themselves never used, but that the public has adopted with the particular enthusiasm of people who need to believe that some things, at least, are certain. You are not traveling in the comfort the newspapers describe. Your ticket costs £7 and 10 shillings, a significant sum, the result of months of saving, and it gives you passage in third class. In the lower decks of this enormous ship, among the emigrants and the hopeful, and the people who have decided that whatever is ahead of them must be better than what they are leaving behind. You are not alone in this. Around you, on the Southampton dock, hundreds of people are doing the same thing, presenting papers, answering questions from White Star officials, moving toward the gangway that leads to the lower levels of the ship. They speak a dozen languages: Irish, English, and Swedish, and Italian, and Polish, and Arabic. They carry trunks and baskets and bundles. Children hold their parents' hands and look up at the hull of the ship with expressions of pure astonishment. Tonight, this journey carries you into the world below the Titanic's waterline, the cabins and corridors and dining rooms and social spaces of third class. The daily rhythms of a voyage that, in these first days, feels like nothing so much as the beginning of everything. Close your eyes if you like. The ship will carry you. Chapter 1. Boarding the lower gangway. The third-class passengers do not board the way the first-class passengers board. There is no grand staircase to greet you, no steward in white gloves taking your coat. You enter the Titanic through a lower gangway on the ship's side, a functional door in a functional part of the hull, the kind of entrance designed for efficiency rather than impression. A White Star official checks your ticket and your papers. Another official, a doctor, gives you a brief medical examination: eyes, hands, throat, because the United States requires it, of immigrants arriving by ship. And so the shipping lines examine their passengers before departure, to avoid the cost of returning anyone found inadmissible at Ellis Island. It is a routine and slightly humiliating process, and you submit to it with the patience of someone who has learned that this is part of the price of the ticket. Then you are through, and you are inside the Titanic, and the world changes scale. The corridors of the lower decks are not luxurious, but they are not what you expected either. The walls are white-painted steel, clean and new. The floors are linoleum, also clean. The lighting is electric, and this alone is remarkable to passengers who have lived their whole lives with candles and oil lamps. Electric light at the press of a button, available at any hour. The smell is fresh paint and new steel and the faint brine of the sea, not yet replaced by the accumulated smell of hundreds of bodies in close quarters. A steward leads you and a small group of other passengers through a series of corridors and down a staircase to your accommodation. You pass doors, each one the same white-painted steel, each one with a number. The ship is organized by streets and numbers, and you commit yours to memory. You will need to know how to find your way back here, through this labyrinth of identical passages. Your cabin is on F deck, deep in the ship, somewhere near the middle of its enormous length. It is small, 2 bunk beds against one wall, 2 more against the other, a small porthole window near the ceiling, a washstand with a mirror above it, hooks on the wall for clothing. 4 passengers to a cabin. In the older ships of just a decade ago, third-class passengers slept in open dormitories of 50 or 100 people with no privacy whatsoever. This 2 bunks, 4 people, a door that closes is considered a significant improvement. And it is. Your cabin mates are already here or arrive shortly after you. A young man from County Cork in Ireland, traveling alone, his English carrying the soft roundness of the southern counties. A Swedish woman in her 30s with a child of perhaps 7, going to join a husband who went ahead 2 years ago. A middle-aged man from Lebanon, Syria, as it was then called, who speaks almost no English, but who greets you with a nod and a careful smile, and unpacks his belongings with the methodical calm of someone who has been waiting a long time for this moment. You take the lower bunk on the right. You put your trunk under the bed. You hang your coat on the hook. The ship's engines, somewhere far below, begin to vibrate. Chapter 2. Your cabin below the waterline. F-deck is approximately 20 feet below the waterline. This is not something you think about consciously, at first. It becomes apparent in small ways. The porthole window, when you look through it, shows you not sky and horizon but a circle of dark green water, the surface 3 feet above your eye level. When the sea is calm, the light that comes through this porthole is the light of water, green and shifting and slightly dim, as if the sun has been translated into something cooler and more diffuse on its way to you. When the sea is not calm, the porthole shows you nothing but white and gray. The cabin is intimate in a way that shared spaces with strangers rarely manage to be. Within the first few hours of the voyage, certain things become understood without discussion. The young Irishman, whose name is Patrick, takes the bunk above yours and establishes, quietly, that he has done a great deal of traveling and knows how to manage in tight quarters. The Swedish woman Astrid arranges her daughter's belongings with a careful efficiency that suggests she has been thinking about this journey for a long time and has a plan for every contingency. The Lebanese man keeps to himself in a way that is not unfriendly, precisely, but that indicates a man accustomed to being the only one in any given room who does not share the language of everyone else. You learn each other's rhythms quickly, the way people always do when they share a small space. Who rises early, who sleeps heavily, who needs quiet before sleeping, and who can sleep through anything. Patrick is good company in the evenings. He has a quality that many Irish emigrants have, a kind of practiced sociability born of a culture that prizes conversation as a form of art. He tells you about County Cork, about his family's farm, about the cousin in Boston who is going to meet him at the dock. He has told these stories before. You realize told them to himself in the months of preparation, rehearsing the narrative of why he is doing this, building it into something that can bear the weight of what he is leaving. The cabin smells, as all cabins eventually do, of the people in it. But in these first days, it still carries the newness of the ship, that particular smell of fresh materials and paint, and the industry of 1,000 workers who built this thing in Belfast over the past 3 years. The Titanic is so new that the rivets in the walls still look bright. The paint on the ceiling has been dry for only a few weeks. Through the bulkheads, the steel walls that divide the ship's interior, you can hear, at certain hours, the sounds of the surrounding world. The deep thrumming of the engines, the movement of water against the hull, a constant rushing that changes in pitch and rhythm with the speed and sea conditions. The voices of passengers in adjacent cabins, indistinct but present. The footsteps of people in the corridor outside. These sounds, by the second night, become the sounds of sleep. Chapter 3. The dining room. The third-class dining room is on F-deck, not far from your cabin, and it seats perhaps a third of the third-class passengers at a time. The meals are served in shifts, and you learn quickly which shift is yours and when to appear. The room is long and narrow, fitted with wooden tables and benches bolted to the floor. The ceiling is low. The electric lights are bright. At mealtimes, it is loud, with conversation in many languages, with the sound of cutlery and ceramic, with children who have decided that the dining room is a reasonable place to run, and with the particular vocal energy of a large group of people who have nothing to do but eat and talk and wait. The food is better than you expected. White Star Line has a reputation to maintain, even in third class, and the food provided to steerage passengers on the Titanic is considerably better than what many of them eat at home. Breakfast is porridge, with bread and butter and marmalade, and sometimes Kipper's smoked herring and tea. Midday dinner is the main meal, a soup first and then a meat course with potatoes and vegetables and bread and more tea. The evening meal is lighter hash or stew with pickles and bread and cheese. None of it is elegant, but it is hot, and there is enough of it, and the plates are clean. There is something equalizing about a meal eaten at a long table with strangers. The usual markers by which people place each other: clothing, occupation, the particular confidence that money provides, are less legible here than they would be on land. What you can see, instead, is appetite and courtesy, and the small rituals of eating that each person carries from their own background. The Irish break their bread a particular way. The Swedish family says a brief prayer before eating, the father bowing his head and the children following in practiced unison. The Lebanese man eats with a methodical care that suggests someone accustomed to treating a meal as something not to be wasted. The children are the most direct communicators across the table. They reach for bread without ceremony, spill things without guilt, make eye contact with strangers without the hesitation that adults acquire with age. A girl of perhaps 8 from one of the Polish families has developed a friendship with the youngest Mayo child, a boy of 5, conducted entirely through facial expressions and the sharing of food, in which she gives him pieces of her bread and he gives her portions of his jam, and both consider this an excellent arrangement. You sit where you find space and find yourself, over the course of the first few days, developing regular table mates, the way travelers do not exactly friends, but the people whose faces become familiar and whose presence at the table becomes, in its quiet way, a comfort. A family from County Mayo occupies one end of your usual table. A father, a mother, 4 children, ranging from perhaps 5 to 14 years old. They are going to Chicago, where the father's brother runs a construction business and has promised work. The father speaks with a deliberate confidence about this plan, the kind of confidence that is the product not of certainty but of the need to appear certain in front of his children. Across from you, for several meals in a row, a young woman from Sweden eats her dinner with the serious concentration of someone who intends to notice everything about this experience and commit it to memory. She is 19 or 20, traveling with her older sister, going to Minneapolis, where a community of Swedish immigrants has been established for 20 years. She tells you, in careful English, that she has been learning the language for 2 years in preparation for this voyage. Her English is better than her modesty suggests. The stewards who serve the third-class dining room are efficient and not unkind. They speak between them most of the languages represented at the tables, or they use the universal language of pointing and nodding that works when everything else fails. They clear the plates. They bring more bread. They pour the tea from large institutional teapots that never seem to run empty. After meals, the tables empty slowly. Some passengers go directly back to their cabins. Others linger, continuing conversations that began over the soup. The Mayo father produces a small pipe after dinner each night and smokes it with the careful satisfaction of a man rationing something precious. The children drift toward the doorway and are called back. The ship moves steadily beneath all of this. The engines maintain their deep, continuous note. And outside, beyond the steel walls, the North Atlantic passes. Chapter 4. The people around you. Third class on the Titanic carries approximately 700 passengers. They come from more than 30 countries. In the corridors and the dining room and the general room, you are surrounded by the sound of the world speaking in its dozens of languages, a sound that is, depending on your mood and your nature, either overwhelming or strangely beautiful. The Irish are the largest single group among the third-class passengers, as they have been on every Atlantic liner for the past 70 years, ever since the famine cleared the country and pointed its people west. Many of them boarded not at Southampton but at Queenstown Cobb on the southern coast of Ireland, where the Titanic made her last stop before the open ocean. You saw them come aboard there, a new group moving through the already familiar corridors of the lower decks, carrying their bags with the practiced ease of a people accustomed to departure. Some were crying. Most were not, or had decided not to. Patrick from County Cork knows many of them by the second day, or seems to, in the way that Irish people seem to find each other in any gathering, the recognition operating at some level below that of simple acquaintance. He introduces you to a group of young men from County Longford who are going to work in the steel mills of Pittsburgh. They are in their early 20s, all of them, and they have that particular quality of young men in transit between one phase of their lives and the next, not quite settled in any identity yet, still becoming the future, an open space that seems more exciting than frightening when you are 22. The Scandinavians travel in family groups, mostly. They have the careful preparedness of people who have been planning this for a long time and have not left much to chance. The Swedish and Norwegian families on this ship are part of a decades-long migration to the American Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, where the landscape resembles what they left behind enough to make the transition possible and different enough to hold the possibility of something new. The Eastern Europeans, Poles, Slovaks, Ukrainians, Hungarians are harder for you to reach, the languages more foreign, the cultural distance greater. But in the general room in the evenings, when the music starts, language becomes less relevant. And you watch a Polish man in his 40s dance with an Irish girl of 16, with the complete mutual delight of people who have discovered that a polka and a jig have enough in common to navigate. And this seems, in the moment, like important information. The Lebanese and Syrian passengers traveling from Cherbourg, where the ship's second stop had been, occupy a particular position in the social geography of third class. They are predominantly Christian, which surprises some of the other passengers who have fewer accurate ideas about the Middle East than they imagine. They travel in tight family and community groups, and they share food from cloth bags at mealtimes that smells of spices unfamiliar to the northern European noses around them. The children learn each other's names across the language barrier faster than anyone. What all of these people share, what makes them, despite everything else, recognizable to each other, is the particular quality of a person in motion towards something they have chosen. They have made a decision that most people never make. They have looked at the life in front of them and found it insufficient, or merely possible, and decided to seek another. This requires a quality that is not quite courage, and not quite desperation, but something made of both. There is a woman traveling alone who you notice because she is traveling alone without husband, without family, without any obvious companion at all. She is perhaps 35. She boards at Queenstown like many of the Irish passengers, and she finds her way to the dining room on the first evening with the slightly over-deliberate composure of someone who has rehearsed this moment. Her name, you learn eventually from Patrick, is Nora, and she is going to her sister in Massachusetts, and the going to the sister is both a fact and a decision made in circumstances that Patrick knows about and does not elaborate on. She is not the only person on this ship who has left something difficult behind. The difficulty varies in economy that has ground down to nothing, a family too large for the land to support, a marriage that has run its course, a small ambition that a small country has no room for. The reasons are as various as the passengers themselves. But the departure is the same, and in this they share something real, something unspoken but present between them when they look at each other across the dining room. You are among them. You recognize them because they recognize themselves in you. Chapter 5. The Dreams. America is not a place, exactly, to the people on this ship. It is a condition. You understand this in the third-class dining room, in the conversations that happen between the soup and the main course, between the main course and the tea. The word America appears in sentences, the way a destination word appears in a sentence, the end of the thought, the point toward which everything else is pointing. Going to America, working in America. Starting in America. Building in America. The specifics of what people are going to do when they get there vary enormously. Patrick is going to Boston, to his cousin, to work in construction until he has saved enough to bring his younger brother over. The Mayo family is going to Chicago, to the construction business, the children to school. The Swedish girl is going to Minneapolis to work in domestic service for a family that has been arranged through a relative clean work, she says, with a room and regular wages. The Lebanese man in your cabin, you have learned, through patient gesture and the help of another passenger who speaks some Arabic, is going to Detroit, to a cousin who has been there for 4 years and has a small dry goods shop and needs help. None of these plans are glamorous. They are sensible, practical arrangements made by practical people who have been told by someone who went ahead of them that the arrangements are achievable. The glamour is not in the plan. The glamour is in the fact of the plan. The fact of having a plan that begins with getting on this ship. Beneath the plans, there are other things. You sense them in the quieter moments, in the way the Mayo father looks out the porthole window after dinner on the first evening, alone with it for just a moment. And something crosses his face that is not the deliberate confidence of a man explaining his brother's construction business to his children, in the way Astrid the Swede checks and rechecks the small bundle she carries in her bag, letters, photographs, some official papers, running her thumb along the edge as if counting them, as if the counting were a form of reassurance. Everyone on this ship is carrying the weight of what they have left. It is not the same as grief. Exactly, grief is for the dead, and they are leaving the living. It is more like a bill that will come due eventually, the cost of the choice not yet fully paid. When you arrive in America, and the work begins, and the days start accumulating, this weight will start to lighten. That is the understanding. That is the deal. For now, on this ship, in these days between departure and arrival, there is a suspension. You are neither here nor there. The Ireland or Sweden or Lebanon or Poland that you left is receding day by day. America is growing day by day. In between is this ship, this ocean, this strange interim life below the waterline. You lie in your bunk at night and let the vibration of the engines pass through the mattress and through your body, and you think about what is waiting for you, and the thought has the particular quality of thoughts in the dark, larger, more saturated with feeling, requiring no response. This is allowed. This is, in fact, the purpose of this interval. Chapter 6. The sounds of the ship. The Titanic makes more sound than you expected. Or perhaps it is that you are closer to the source of it than you imagined you would be. The engines are below you, deep in the ship's mechanical heart, and their vibration rises through the steel floors and the steel walls and into every surface your body touches. It is not a violent vibration, more like the hum of a very large and very calm thing doing its work. You feel it in the soles of your feet when you stand. You feel it in your back when you lie down. By the second day, you have stopped noticing it consciously, the way you stop noticing the sound of your own breathing, and it becomes instead a background condition of existence aboard the ship, a constant that defines the space of every other sensation. The propellers are audible too, faintly, in the aft sections of the ship where the third-class cabins are located. A deep churning rhythm, steady as a pulse, the sound of the ocean being pushed aside to let the ship through. You learn to read this sound in small ways. When the rhythm changes slightly, the ship is adjusting speed or course. When it deepens, the engines are working harder against weather or current. When it is perfectly steady and smooth, as it is in these first days of the voyage, the sea is cooperative, and the crossing is going well. The ocean itself makes sounds through the hull. The sound of water at speed against steel is a continuous rushing that varies in pitch and intensity with the sea state. In calm water, it is almost soothing, a white noise that fills the space between other sounds. When the sea picks up, as it does on the second day out from Queenstown, the sound becomes more complex. Long, surging rushes punctuated by the dull thud of a wave that the bow has declined to split cleanly. You feel these thuds in the same surfaces where you feel the engines everywhere, simultaneously. Above and around all of this is the social sound of the ship. 700 people in close quarters generate a continuous ambient noise that is like a city compressed into a single building. The corridors carry sound efficiently. Voices, footsteps, the sound of a door being pulled shut, a child crying somewhere on E-deck. An argument in Polish that is over before it began and has become laughter by the end of the corridor. At meal times, the dining room roars with it. At night, it settles to a murmur, then to the small sounds of sleepers, then to the engines and the sea. On the second evening, someone in the general room produces a fiddle. The sound of it moves through the ship the way music always moves through enclosed spaces, through gaps in doors, along corridors, reaching you before you are close enough to see the source. It is a reel, played fast, the kind of tune that does not ask permission before it rearranges your mood. By the time you reach the general room doorway, a space has been cleared in the middle of the room and 3 couples are dancing. Chapter 7. The general room music and dancing. The third-class general room is at the stern of the ship on sea deck, a large open space with wooden benches along the walls, tables in the center, and a small upright piano in the corner that someone has already determined is in reasonable tune. This room is the social heart of the lower decks. It is where the evenings happen. The music begins on the first full day at sea and does not really stop for the duration of the voyage. There is always someone who can play the fiddle, or the accordion, or the tin whistle, or who knows enough chords on the piano to accompany a song. The Irish passengers contribute the most to this. Irish music is designed for exactly these conditions, for the long evenings of a people accustomed to gathering in small rooms with no other entertainment but the Swedes have their own songs, and the Poles and the Lebanese passengers contribute a rhythm section via enthusiastic clapping that turns out to work with almost any musical tradition. What strikes you, watching all of this, is how quickly strangers find ways to participate in each other's music. The Mayo children are dancing a reel that their father taught them. The Swedish girl from your dinner table is watching with her arms folded, tapping her foot, not yet certain whether to join. A man from Galway who plays the fiddle with his eyes closed launches into a slow air, one of the old ones, the kind that doesn't need words to communicate exactly what it's about, and the room goes quieter, the dancers pausing, the sound of the engines suddenly audible again beneath the music. Then the air ends, and someone calls out for a reel, and the fiddle obliges, and the room accelerates back into motion. The piano player is a young man from Liverpool, not an emigrant, but a stoker deadheading back to America after some shore leave, who plays with the slightly imprecise enthusiasm of someone self-taught and entirely confident. He plays music hall songs, and then, when asked, attempts whatever the person in front of him is humming at him, and frequently succeeds. He has that quality of absolute unself-consciousness about music that makes people feel like they can sing and dance in front of him without embarrassment. You stay longer than you planned on each of these evenings. There is something in the atmosphere of the general room at night, the warmth of it, the compressed energy of all these different people finding a common language and rhythm that makes it difficult to leave. You sit with your back against the wall and watch and listen and feel, in a way that is hard to articulate, that you are witnessing something real about human beings, about what they do when they have decided to begin again, about how they carry their past and their hope simultaneously in the space of a single dance. The children fall asleep in their parents' arms. The music continues. The ship moves through the dark. Chapter 8. Days on the Open Ocean. By the third day at sea, the rhythm of shipboard life has established itself completely. The bell for breakfast, the walk to the dining room through corridors that you now navigate without thinking. The particular way the ship moves in the morning, a gentle rolling that you have already adapted to without noticing, your body having made the necessary adjustments to the mobile floor, the way a body always eventually makes peace with its conditions. After breakfast, the day is your own. There is not much to do, in the formal sense. No excursions, no scheduled activities. The third-class passengers have the use of the poop deck, The open area at the very stern of the ship, the outdoor space allocated to steerage, and on the fine days of this crossing, which are clear and cold and blue, many of the passengers spend time up there, watching the wake spread out behind the ship in a long white V that eventually loses itself in the ocean. The wake is something you find yourself returning to. You lean on the stern rail and watch it, this evidence of passage, this record of where the ship has been, already dissolving back into the sea. The ocean behind you is immense and dark and indifferent to the mark the ship has made on it. You have been on this ship for 3 days, and you have already traveled further from home than you have ever been in your life, and yet the water behind you shows nothing, remembers nothing, continues exactly as before. The other passengers on the poop deck in these hours become familiar faces. The Cork boys have a running card game going in one corner, their conversation a mixture of English and Irish that they slip between without seeming to notice. Astrid's daughter has found 2 other children of approximately her age, and they have established a game that requires no shared language, a ball, a chalk mark on the deck, a set of rules invented on the spot. Patrick leans on the rail near you sometimes, and looks at the horizon with an expression of careful calculation, as if he is trying to measure the distance to Boston. The sea, on these days, is the North Atlantic in its moderate moods, long gray-green swells from the northwest, not dangerous, just present. The ship, riding them with the vast mechanical confidence of something that knows it is bigger than any wave it will encounter. The sky is enormous. There are no landmarks anywhere. This is the thing about the open ocean that the mind has trouble accepting. Even after days of it, there is nothing. In every direction, the same horizon, the same dark water, the same sky. The ship is a point in infinite space, and the space is indifferent to the point, and somehow this is not frightening but clarifying. You think about the people you know who have made this crossing before you, the cousin who went 5 years ago and wrote back letters about the factory in New York, the neighbor's son who went and has never written back at all. You are part of a stream, you realize? A long, continuous human movement that has been flowing in this direction for 70 years, one ship at a time, one family at a time, one person with a trunk and a canvas bag at a time. You are not doing anything new. You are doing something very old. The sea does something to this feeling. The open ocean reinforces it. On land, there is always the option of turning back. You can change your mind, miss your train, decide that this particular departure is not the right one. On a ship 4 days from the nearest port, there is no turning back. The decision has been made, and the consequences are in motion, and the only direction is forward. For some passengers, this is terrifying. You can read it in their faces during the quiet moments, the fear surfacing when they are not actively maintaining their composure. For others, it is a relief. The decision is made. The uncertainty is over. All that remains is to see how it turns out. Patrick, at the stern rail one afternoon, says something that stays with you. He says that the hardest part about leaving was the last week before departure, when he still had the power to change his mind. Once he was on the ship, he says, he felt better than he had in months. You understand this completely. You do not say so. Because it seems like the kind of understanding that doesn't need to be confirmed. It is simply present between 2 people standing at the rail of a ship in the middle of the North Atlantic, watching the wake dissolve. This is, somehow, a comfort. Chapter 9. Night Below Deck. The Titanic at night, below the waterline, is a different place than the Titanic in the day. The corridors are quiet by 10 o'clock. The general room music has wound down. The last songs played. The last couples danced. The children long since carried to their bunks. The dining room is dark and still. The tables cleared. The chairs empty. The ship at night is the ship reduced to its essentials, the engines, the sea, the structure of steel carrying its sleeping cargo through the dark. In your cabin on F deck, the porthole shows you nothing. The water is dark at night, a void, the electric lights of the ship's exterior not reaching this far below the surface. Sometimes, in calm water, you can see the faintest green phosphorescence, the biological light of disturbed plankton, visible only because the world outside the porthole is otherwise absolutely black. It lasts a few seconds and then it is gone. You lie in your bunk and listen to the ship. The sounds are the same sounds as the day, but the silence around them is deeper at night, and this makes them more audible. The engines are the same. The water against the hull is the same. But you can now also hear things you didn't hear in the day. The very faint groan of the ship's structure as it flexes in a swell. A sound so low that it is almost below the threshold of hearing. The drip of condensation from a cold pipe. A cough somewhere down the corridor. Patrick above you sleeps quickly and heavily and makes no sound. Astrid has arranged a small curtain of cloth around her daughter's bunk for privacy, and the child sleeps behind it without fuss. The Lebanese man breathes with the slow regularity of deep sleep within minutes of lying down, and you have come to find this sound, over the days of the crossing, something close to companionable. There is a quality to sleeping on a ship that is unlike sleeping anywhere else. The motion is constant, but never exactly repeated. The swells have a rhythm, but not a meter, so the rocking is always slightly unpredictable, always just slightly off from what you anticipated. And this inconsistency, paradoxically, is what makes it so effective for sleep. You cannot count on it enough to brace against it, so you surrender to it instead. The body learns to float. On the nights when the sea runs higher, the rolling is more pronounced. You brace your arms against the sides of the bunk to keep from rolling too far. The ship adjusts, and the motion changes. This is the ship doing what it was built to do, and somewhere in the knowledge of that, in the knowledge that this enormous structure was designed by engineers who understood exactly these forces and built to manage them, there is a kind of trust that allows you to let motion be what it is. The ship has sounds that only the night reveals. In the absolute quiet of 2 or 3 in the morning, with the social noise of the day completely stilled, you can hear the Titanic speaking to itself, the groan of steel under load, the faint tick of metal expanding and contracting with temperature changes, the knock of something loose somewhere far down the corridor that taps an irregular rhythm before it stops. These are the sounds of a structure doing its job. Engineers would find them reassuring. For a passenger lying awake in the dark, they are simply the evidence that you are aboard something vast and complicated and, in its way, alive. Through the porthole, on the clearest nights, you can occasionally see stars. The porthole frames a small circle of sky just enough to confirm that the stars are there, the same stars that were there when you left, reconfigured slightly by your new position in the world, but still present. The Great Bear, Polaris. The stars that sailors have used for navigation for thousands of years, the same stars that the Titanic's navigators are using right now, up on the bridge, on those same dark decks above you. You are on the same ship as those navigators. You are all going to the same place. The stars do not distinguish between decks. By the 4th night, you do not remember falling asleep. You are awake, and then you are not, and the interval between them has no weight. Chapter 10, Sunday, the last ordinary day. The 14th of April, 1912, is a Sunday. You do not know it is the last ordinary day. No one does. This is the nature of ordinary days. Their ordinariness is visible only in retrospect, from the vantage point of whatever comes after. In the living of it, Sunday is simply Sunday. The usual breakfast, the usual corridors, the usual people. The weather has changed slightly. The air on the poop deck this morning is noticeably colder than the days before, a dry, sharp cold that smells faintly of ice, though the sea is calm, almost flat, which makes the cold seem stranger somehow, unattached to any weather system visible from the deck. A few of the passengers who usually spend the mornings outside retreat to the general room instead. Others stay, collars turned up, because the sky is extraordinarily clear, and the blue of it, at this latitude in April, has a quality that is hard to find on land. Patrick plays cards in the general room in the afternoon with the Longford men. He is in good spirits. He has calculated, based on his understanding of the crossing time and what someone told him about the ship's speed, that they will arrive in New York in 2 days. Tuesday morning. The cousin will be at the dock. This is the plan, and the plan is holding. Astrid writes a letter at a table in the corner, slowly and carefully, the letter to her husband in Minneapolis. She has been writing this letter since the first day, adding to it each evening, and it has by now become a diary of the crossing, the cabin, the food, the other passengers. What her daughter has said and done. She will mail it when they arrive, and he will read about their voyage from the safety of the end of it. This is the plan. You spend part of the afternoon on the poop deck alone, watching the sea. The water is darker than it has been on previous days, a deep, cold gray-green, almost black in the troughs between the swells. There are no whitecaps. The surface is very still for an ocean this far out, still in a way that feels like held breath rather than genuine calm. The sunset comes and goes. The temperature drops with it. In the general room that evening, the music is as it has been every evening. The fiddle, the piano, the singing, the dancing. The Mayo children are up past their usual time, the rules slightly relaxed for Sunday. Patrick is in the middle of a story that has the 3 Longford men laughing before he gets to the end of it. Astrid's daughter is asleep with her head on her mother's arm. You watch all of this for a while. The warmth of the room, the light, the sound of people who have come from all the places of the world and are going to all the other places of the world, gathered here for this interval between their past and their future, making the most of what the present has. Then you go to bed. The engines are steady. The ship moves through the cold dark. Outside, the sea is flat and still and very cold. You do not know this yet. You sleep. Conclusion. Their names. There were 709 people traveling in 3rd class aboard the Titanic. Their names are recorded. This is worth knowing that in the years and decades after this voyage, people went to considerable trouble to record the names, to identify the individuals who were aboard, to place faces and stories and origins to the numbers. The Irish from County Mayo and County Cork and County Longford. The Swedes from the farm country north of Stockholm. The families from Lebanon heading to Detroit and Sao Paulo and Mexico City because America, for these emigrants, was not only the United States but the whole of the Western Hemisphere, wherever the work was. The young men from Slovakia and Poland and Croatia who were going to the mines and the mills and the steel furnaces of Pennsylvania and Ohio. Many of them did not arrive. Of the 709 third-class passengers, roughly 174 survived. The disparity between survival rates in different classes on that ship is a fact that has been examined and explained and debated for more than a century, and the examination has not made it less of what it is. But this is not the story that was told tonight. Tonight, the story was the 4 days before the ordinary days, the real days, when they were simply people who had made a decision and were carrying its weight across the ocean. People who ate porridge in the morning and danced in the evenings and wrote letters they intended to mail in New York. People who held their children's hands in new corridors and made small talk with strangers over soup and lay in their bunks at night listening to the engines and feeling the motion of the sea and thinking, in the dark, about what was waiting for them. They were real. They had names. They had plans. They had people who were going to meet them at the dock. This is what the story is for, to hold that, for a moment, before the other story takes over, to give them back the ordinary days that belong to them. Rest now.